I learned this trick from my buddy Greg. Basically, you take an old bolt, this is an old head bolt, and you just grind a groove down in through the threads. This block just came back from the machine shop and it is super clean. But before I go and assemble everything, he said, do this to my bolt and then run it through all of the threads, because even though it is super clean, you still might find some goop. This is just a geeky extra step to do, and I don't mind doing it, just taking a little extra time and going through all of these threads and just making sure everything is 100% a-okay. What's up, tubers? Welcome back to my teeny tiny channel. Some progress on the DeLorean LS, and I'm gonna show you the oil pans from the stock LS4 and the one that you'll need if you're doing this project. It's from a GTO, and there's a modification. You don't have to do it, but they say it makes it a whole lot easier to install the engine in the car if you do this mod. And it seems, pretty straightforward and simple. So we're going to tackle that today. Also, putting the crank into the block. I went ahead and purchased the GTO oil pan. They're almost unobtainium. They don't reproduce this oil pan, and there are aftermarket versions, but I don't think any of them are quite low enough where they need to be to clear for this project. So I couldn't just go out to Summit and buy, a front sump aftermarket oil pan. So I had to do some browsing on the old interwebs, and I finally found one. I convinced a gentleman out in California to box it and ship it. So a ton of thanks to him, because it was not easy finding this oil pan, and they are expensive. This is the stock pan that was on my engine when I got it. This is just your factory LS4 oil pan. I'm pretty sure this pan actually fits a number of different LS motors, but the one that you're going to want to get for this project is this one. So this is a front sump, and the modification that's needed or suggested is to trim this tab right here, trim this out so that this portion right here fits over the cross member. So there's your cross member that you're going to be trying to clear. Now the whole rear part of this car comes off, and I've actually cut out that rear cross member section, so the engine will actually kind of slide in just like this. I don't have to try to come down from the top or anything like that. I've done everything that I can to make this as easy on myself. So this pan also has this little sensor, and I don't see anywhere on this pan that sensor gets relocated or even used. So I'm gonna have to kind of figure out what this doodad exactly does, and if it's even needed. I'm guessing not. Something else I've noticed is this gasket is actually like riveted to the actual oil pan. I guess this old one was as well, but apparently it was just broken, or maybe I pulled it off not knowing. I'm not sure, but I didn't know that. So this should be interesting. I don't know if this gasket is like reusable. I don't know that I want to reuse it. All of this LS stuff is totally new to me, especially this project. This is quite the learning experience as I go. There's a lot of little stuff that I've noticed with some of these parts, and I don't want to rush things and miss that stuff. So if I need to stop and kind of research it and figure out what I'm doing, that's fine. I'm not in a rush to get this project done, but I have kind of set a goal for myself to get this thing hopefully on the road, fingers crossed, by March. So I got some work to do. I went ahead and disassembled this entire thing inside. I cleaned all of the hardware. I'm sure I can get new gaskets. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. But I'm a big stickler about having all your hardware cleaned up, threads cleaned, all that good stuff. I mean, reusing dirty hardware, that's just one of my oh no-nos.
I have a list called my oh no-nos.
I gotta do some grinding and some cutting on these tabs right here. Here are my marks. That's pretty much where I'm gonna cut. Basically all I did was took my marker and kind of laid it flat against here and then pulled it down, laid it flat against here and made my mark that way. That way it gives me a little bit of a lip there to work with. I don't necessarily need to try to get it as flush as possible with this. We want to eliminate this area. So having a little bit of a lip here, I don't think that's going to hurt. Anytime you are cutting something and you have sparks and all that good stuff, you definitely want to make sure that you have something that is combustible right near it. That way the sparks can hit it and set it ablaze. For entertainment value. They are trimmed. I quickly figured out that using a cutoff wheel on a grinder will only get you so far. So you can actually do a combination of two things like I did. You can kind of use a cutoff wheel to get you started on the edge here, and then on this edge, and then the same thing over here, and then switch to a hacksaw. It's a little more time consuming, but if you go slow, you'll get a pretty decent cut. What I did was just kind of made a line, made a groove with the grinder as far as I could without touching the edges of it, and I just followed that line with the hacksaw. Now I can go in and kind of grind this and smooth it and make it nice and neat, and not worry about being up against the bottom flat edge here. I've got a little bit of material I can still take off to fix this so it doesn't look kind of jacked up. I just kind of threw everything back together so that I don't lose any of the hardware or pieces or any of that junk. I'm going to go ahead and look for these little gaskets and see if I can even buy those. I'm pretty sure I can. I don't know why they wouldn't sell those. But here it is. Much cleaner than it was before. And now, I think it's time to crank things up. See what I did there? This part of the engine build is literally the most boring thing to me. It's the most tedious and time consuming, but it's the most important part. What I'm doing right now is setting the thrust on my crank. So I've got a dial indicator gauge set up on the nose, on the snout of the crank here. And what I'm doing is moving the crank forward, hopefully backwards. And it looks like I'm only getting about 3 thou movement. So that tells me I'm going to have to shave down the bearing just a little bit to get a tiny bit more play, because it should be, I believe, between 5 and 7 thousandths. Well, it's been several hours, probably, gosh, at least 4 that I've been spending on this. But the hardest part is now behind me. Now that I know this thing is dialed in, all the clearances are where they need to be, it's just a matter of putting the pieces back together. I hated doing this. I must have taken the crank out 5 times. But every time it goes in, you got to torque everything back down and get it all the way it's supposed to be before you can check it correctly. It's a lot of time. You've got to be really patient. But now I've learned something new. This is now the final assembly of the crankshaft. All of the tolerances have been checked and are good, and everything has been lubed correctly with my engine assembly lube. There's a sequence to tightening these, so I've gone ahead and numbered my inside bolts and the outside bolts. So there's a first pass of the inside, then there's a first pass of the outside, and then you come back and you have to degree. It's not a torque spec, it's actually like you take your wrench to a certain degree for the insides and the outsides. So the next step is you have to take the inner bolts, once they're torqued to 15 foot-pounds, and you have to take your wrench, set it on there, and basically take your ratchet to 80 degrees on your second pass, final pass. Inner bolts go to 80 degrees, outer bolts go to 51 degrees. It's not a torque spec, it's kind of weird with these LS motors. I'd prefer just having a torque number, but this is how they do it. So what I've done is I have this handy dandy little angle finder, and I've set it at 80 degrees. I'm gonna mark the bolt with a paint marker so I know where the little paint mark is, and then I'm going to line it up, and I'll know when I get here, and that way I can double check to make sure that it's gone the 80 degrees that it needs to. There it is, torque down. We just gotta rotate this. There we go, that feels good. Nice and smooth, that's the way we like it. Everything feels great, and we're gonna run it. All kinds of progress today, I'm loving it. So I went ahead and opened up most of the hardware that came with my install kit for the LS1 into the DeLorean, and just kind of started mocking up pieces to make sure that, one, I had everything, and two, I had all the hardware needed. It turns out I'm actually just missing, like, I don't know, a few washers and one bolt so far. Kind of annoying that you spend this much money on a kit and then you come up missing hardware, but you know, am I that guy that's going to call and complain because I'm missing one bolt and, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 washers? Probably not. So one thing that DeLorean Midwest does that I really enjoy, they send out like a complete bolt kit for all of the pieces, and each part of the kit comes in a little plastic bag, and then they have, you know, each one's labeled, which is really nice. But to take it a step further, you know, engine mount plate to engine, it'd be nice if they put, you know, how many bolts, how many washers, whatever you're supposed to have in that little package. That way you can kind of double check it when you undo it and not find out when you've got it mounted. Anyway, you know, take it for what it's worth. Here's the transaxle with all of my pieces kind of mocked into place. Got the brackets, the spacer, clutch slave cylinder with the new modified fork. Everything bolted up really nice. Now everything is just kind of mocked up. And then as far as the engine, these are really nice plates. Everything went well on this side, motor mount. Everything's bolted. This is actually the passenger side. The motor's actually flipped upside down right now. So there's passenger side, and then driver side. This is where I'm actually missing a bolt right there, and it's weird. There's like a couple extra holes, and I'm not really sure what those are for. I'm actually just gonna reach out to Josh, who used to work at DeLorean Midwest. I mean, I think this is pretty much his kit. So, like, he's the guru when it comes to this, and he knows these things inside and out. So I'm curious what goes there. Maybe there's another, I know there's another bracket for the AC, which I don't have, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't included in my kit because you have to buy like this extra bracket kit or something. It's just a way for them to get you to spend more money. Everything, you know, bolts up really nice. Everything fits, and, you know, looks pretty cool. I can't wait to get this thing painted. Then I will be ready to start stabbing stuff in the car, and after that it's really just a matter of plumbing, wiring, and miscellaneous stuff. So maybe I am on track for March. Again, fingers crossed, that's my goal. And if the weather cooperates and my garage doesn't get down to like 20 degrees, I'll actually come out here and work a little bit. Thanks so much for watching. Stay hungry, stay foolish.